especially when I was like in my late teens, early 20s, and just like in relationship after relationship with like total asshole and, you know, getting cheated on and stuff, I would just go to the gym and just like blast like angry breakup songs. And, you know, that I think the book is kind of an angry breakup song in book form.
Yeah.
So,
so this is where the revenge plot really comes from, your own failed relationships that you had in your past. Is that
oh yeah,
are we starting to get to the psychology behind your protagonist Joey, the 18-year-old who's trying to find himself with his relationships?
Yeah, you could say it's a bit autobiographical.
Watch out! You might get what you're after. Cool babies, stranger than a stranger. I'm an ordinary guy, burning down the house.
Hi, welcome back, Ivory Tower Boiler Room listeners. Today is going to be quite entertaining, quite energetic, and a real Jersey reunion. So I'm joined with author Nick DiDomizio. Thank you so much for joining us, Nick.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and it's been months since I've done anything. You know, since I've done a podcast or anything to promote the book, so I'm extra excited to talk about it after having a little bit of a break.
Oh, wonderful. Well, and you know, it's almost your 1-year anniversary with Burn It All Down since it came out in May 2021.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, which means, is there a paperback version that's coming out?
So there was supposed to be one coming out in May, but they're holding off. And I'm not sure what that means.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, like down the road, I hope that, you know, it can find a new audience in paperback, because, you know, that's like a whole other readership that I would love to have the chance to connect with. But yeah, I don't know what's going on at Little Brown.
Oh, okay.
We love them, bless them, but yeah. So TBD on the paperback, but I think eventually there should be.
Yeah, well, so we have to start, I think, first with just the quote that is on a beautiful, frightening image that is very, I don't know, kind of reminds me of like an Andy Warhol type piece with just a house ablaze, this pink house ablaze and flames shooting through the roof. And you have a James Patterson quote where he says that your novel is, and I have to read it, audacious, addictive, highly entertaining, unforgettable, with an exclamation mark. Okay. How did you get James Patterson to endorse your novel?
Yeah, all the adjectives. He really went, he went all out with that blurb. So it was interesting, and like a huge, you know, blessing, obviously, to have that on a debut novel. So we love James. Basically, it was something that happened before the book was even published, when my agent was taking it out to the different publishers, and we were getting, it was kind of a weird submission process, because the book follows it's narrated by an 18-year-old character, and then the other main character is his 34-year-old mother. And so my agent submitted it to both adult and young adult publishers, because we really, and also some of the themes were a little more mature, but it's also because the narrator was so young, we thought it could go either way. So most of the feedback from like most publishers was that, and this was an earlier version of the book, but still the same story. And you know, a lot of the adult publishers felt like it was too young. The teen publishers felt like it was too old. And we really had like trouble finding a place that was willing to publish it. And so she submitted it to an imprint at Little Brown, which at the time James had recently started, where he was publishing his own line of YA books, and it was rejected there. But somehow through the process of going through their editorial acquisition process, before it was rejected, James ended up reading it, and he really had like all these amazing things to say about it. So he came up with the idea that they could publish it as an adult novel, and he said he would put his name on the cover, and that kind of helped get a lot of attention, and it got us the deal basically. And of course there was also like this amazing editor behind the scenes who was pushing for it as well. So yeah, it was kind of one of those, it was just a weird kind of lucky thing that happened, that he got his eyes on it before it was published, and he kept up his end of the bargain and gave us that amazing cover quote. And yeah, it was great. It was definitely a I'm rambling because I'm reliving it all in my head right now, and been trying to figure out like how what to say. But yeah, it was great, and I'm still like, sometimes I don't believe it when I look at the cover and I see that.
I mean, it's incredible, but also I don't want to leave the others out. You have Stephen Rowley, who we've interviewed here. I got to interview him about
I didn't hear that episode.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to listen.
Yeah. We interviewed him about the Guncle. I think Josh Sabera somehow.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I've interviewed him. Yeah. Because I have to say, Burn It All Down does remind me of Josh's Enemies Closer, but like just, not with the Josh doesn't have a crime spree and this almost Bonnie and Clyde type of heist going on.
Right. But the campy gay kind of.
Yeah, but the campiness, the gossip, and Hannah Orenstein also has a really nice quote to say. Great. Yeah. And I love blurbs and endorsements. I think they're just exciting to connect all these writers together. So you mentioned about publishing, and I can not ask you. You do have, or had, I'm not sure where your status is now, but you had an extensive publishing career, didn't you?
Like on the other end?
Mm-hmm,
well,
on the other end.
Yeah, so I was at my most recent role was at Condé Nast, where I was their licensing director, which basically meant that I managed a team of like 4 people, and our role was to oversee like outside usage of all of our owned assets. So a big part of that was like the Vogue archive, where we had all of these like iconic this fashion photography that they own the rights to. So anytime that would get used, or like Allure was one of our brands that has like a really iconic I actually have a plaque behind me, the Best of Beauty Awards, like, so stuff like that. So it was totally unrelated to my work as an author, but it was definitely, it was an interesting, it was a fascinating place to be, especially before the pandemic. And I would run into Anna Wintour like daily.
Yeah, you should see my face, because I am. Yeah. Wait, were you at the new building at One World Trade Center?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and because I worked on every brand at the company, I was always like, and she's the creative director for the whole company, so she works on every brand too. So like, I would be on the Vogue floor one day, and then the next day I would be on GQ or whatever. So we were always crossing paths, but it was funny because I literally would show up to work in like dad jeans and, hiking sneakers and like an LL Bean fleece. And like, I could just tell she was just not like, I was very much invisible to her, I'm sure. She always had like her floral, like full length situation dress with the glasses. But she did send me an email once And it was like out of the blue. It was after I had just finished this big project for her master class. She did like, the online.
Oh, I saw her ad on YouTube for that. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
we did a lot of, my team did a lot of work on that because they used all these like old issues of Vogue to kind of, for her to teach her class. And yeah, one morning I came into the office and it was literally in my inbox from her, and she was like, "Hey Nick," or she probably didn't say hey. I actually have a screenshot of it somewhere because I was like, I'm saving this. Like when I left Conde, I was like,
Oh, wow.
This is the one email that I'm saving. But she was just like, my masterclass comes out today, and I'm so thankful that you helped us get it past the finish line. And so that was very nice. She took time out of her, or someone on her team took time out of her schedule to send me a personal thank you email. So
Yeah. Well,
that
and
was nice.
yeah, and I've heard her be interviewed a lot on podcasts. And, of course, I am sure she is such a strategist, and she knows how the sausage gets made, but she definitely has boundaries. And yeah, I don't know. I don't buy all of the gossipy stories. I mean, I'm sure things have happened, but I have a feeling that she's a very in the moment, like, this is what I do. Like, I have to get here, and isn't really chit-chatting with people.
Right. No, and she's like a hard worker. Like she is in the office every day unless she's traveling. And she is there in meetings. Like she's like very hands-on with every brand at Conde, not just Vogue.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, and isn't she also like the global editor?
Right. So when I was there, they kind of switched from being kind of siloed off, with all the different territories, and they became global, and she took on a role as the global I think the global creative director for like all. I could be misquoting that, but it definitely Vogue for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
so Anna, if you're out there, Nick still has that screenshot, and
yes.
Maybe you can come on here, Anna Wintour, and give us all the advice, and we'll have a reunion of sorts.
Oh my God.
But okay, well, and I think Condé Nast, was that the only like magazine you worked for? Because I remember reading you also maybe wrote for other publications or had works published.
Yeah, so I did. It was weird. I had that whole kind of licensing career, but in the middle of it for 2 years, in 2015 and 2016, I left the industry. I was working at MTV back from like 2012 to 2015, just doing licensing for them. And I took a leap of faith because at that point, I had written my first book and it had gone nowhere, and no agent wanted to touch me because it was nonfiction and I had no platform. So my thought was like, let me try to get a job as like a staff writer at a magazine or a website. And no one would hire me except for this one like really trashy startup called I think they still exist. I don't know, Mic.com, MIC. And at the time they were like going viral all the time. They were kind of like a BuzzFeed, but like really extremely comically woke, to the point of like self-parody. But they hired me. So I worked as a staff writer there for about 1.5 years. And I was like churning out articles. Like, I think in 1.5 years, I probably published at least 500 posts.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. It was like a content machine. But so I did sneak in some stuff that I was proud of. And I kind of wrote a lot of like ridiculous humor type spins on the news. So I luckily wasn't in I was in like the relationships vertical. So I was writing mostly about like sex toys and, just random shit. So it wasn't like the rest of their content, but yeah, I mean, it was a learning experience. I definitely learned how to write fast on a deadline and self-edit and like skills that definitely come in handy when you're writing fiction.
Yeah. Was this in Manhattan where you would the office space was?
Actually, it was also in One World Trade.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it started, they had an office in the West Village, but then we moved to One World Trade. So yeah, when I started at Conde a few years later, it was like a weird kind of homecoming.
Yeah. Well, and like to learn about writing on sex toys.
Yeah.
Were you just going up and down Times Square to those like adult sex toys shops to do your insider research?
No, they would like the whole sex toy industry. They have very aggressive PR people, and they are still sending me emails and pitches and trying to like send me free things. I'm like, I really do not write about this anymore. I promise. It will like you will not get anything in return if you send me a free dildo. Yeah, it was also like I wrote about marriage and other issues, but
yeah. So wow, okay, you had such an interesting background for everything that's to come in Burn It All Down, and I'm just curious, were you mentioned your first book that didn't get picked up, is that still kind of in a holding pattern, or you've put it to the side now that you have Burn It All Down?
That's a great question, because for a long time, like when I first gave up on that book, I did say to myself, like, all right, I'll just hold it for now, and then hopefully down the road I can do something with it. I think now it's just probably, it was a learning experience. I don't think I want it to see the light of day. And then I wrote another book also in between. So Burn It All Down was like the third full book that I had finished. The second one, it was interesting because I actually did get an offer on it last summer after Burn It All Down came out, and which is, people think I'm crazy, but I turned it down because it was, I mean, it wasn't like a life-changing amount of money. Like if they had offered me, like $1 million, I would have been like, go right ahead, please publish it. But it was just like a very modest deal. And it was, it was a book that I wrote that was the best I could do at the time. But when I read it now, I just don't connect with it at all. And to promote a book, you have to be at least a little proud of it, and you have to, like it. And I just didn't feel like I could do that with that book. So yeah, there were two failed books leading up to Burn It All Down. And Burn It All Down was interesting because the other two I spent like years on, really, and writing it just in my nights and weekends and stuff. And Burn It All Down, I really just kind of blew through the first draft in like 3 months, like waking up at 4 a.m. before Vogue and like writing for a few hours every morning, and then like weekends just gave up my social life, and just did it as quickly as I could, because at that point I was like, all right, if this last book doesn't go anywhere, I think I have to just stop trying to make it happen, because it's like so much, you put so much work up front, when you're trying to get published, and there's no guarantee that it'll go anywhere. So you, after doing it a few times, you start to feel a little delusional. Like, why am I putting forth all this effort for zero guarantee? As much as like, as writers, we love writing, but there's definitely a breaking point, I think, when your end goal is to be published. So yeah, thankfully Burn It All Down was the one that hit, and I didn't have to.
Yeah, well, and thank goodness that Little Brown picked it up, because let's jump right into Burn It All Down. I mean, I have to just ask, because I'm such a fan of music, and I literally looked up songs that had burn or fire in them, and there's like hundreds of songs. But of course, right, the number one that comes to our mind is Burning Down the House.
Oh, yes, which is not even on my official Burn It All Down playlist, which seems like
I didn't know you had a playlist.
ghastly oversight. Oh yeah, it's on my link tree. There's a link to it, but
Ooh, okay. Well, I'll
I'll
have to
add
link
that
to the
one.
playlist. But you don't have Burning Down the House?
I know, right? With the cover that I have, you
Oh
would
no, now
think,
you have to, you know, add it and then credit me. No.
right?
But no, I know also when I was talking to my students about this interview, a lot of them mentioned the Adele song about
Oh,
set fire
set
to the
fire to the
rain.
rain. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of music was like a huge part of the inspiration for the book, really, because like I, especially when I was like in my late teens, early 20s, and just like in relationship after relationship with like total asshole and getting cheated on and stuff, I would just go to the gym and just like blast like angry breakup songs. And that, I think the book is kind of an angry breakup song in book form.
Yeah.
So
Oh, so
there's
this is where the revenge plot really comes from, your own failed relationships that you had in your past. Is that
oh yeah.
are we starting to get to the psychology behind your protagonist, Joey, the 18-year-old who's trying to find himself with his relationships?
Yeah, you could say it's a bit autobiographical. For anyone who doesn't know, the basic setup of the story is this, young gay guy who lives with his single mom, who's also very young. He breaks up with his boyfriend who's been cheating on him, and the mom goes through the same thing with the guy she's seeing, and they decide to get some revenge, and it kind of snowballs out of control from there. But yeah, so the beginning, where he finds out his boyfriend was like hooking up with his straight roommate. That was like a complete autobiographical moment from my own history, and I kind of used it as like a jumping off point. And obviously the rest is completely fictionalized, but yeah.
Oh, so you didn't take a baseball bat and then start smashing windows?
Well, there's some truth. Like, I did have some unhinged episodes when I was younger. I was definitely the crazy ex, maybe in one or two situations. But that was why I really loved writing this book, was because I was able to view it from so many years later, being like, now I'm just like the most boring person in like an 8-year relationship, and there's no drama really. I mean, there might have been some in the beginning, but I'm very like, it's just such a different life compared to what I was like when I was, younger. I was able to look at it from a perspective of like a more level-headed adult. And so it made it really fun to kind of give a character the chance to mature through their mistakes in a way that for me, it took much longer, because I didn't let it snowball so much out of control that I had to like, really face my self-destructive tendencies, all at once, like he does in the book. But yeah, so that was, it's always kind of like with a lot of, I think, writers, there's always some kernel of real life that kind of gives you the inspiration. So that was definitely the case here.
Yeah, well, and I think too, like, there's been enough years, I'm assuming, that anything that you say will not be held against you, hopefully in a court of law, Nick.
Right.
But
yeah,
right, so I mean, I am curious though, like, how long ago are we talking about with your like, you call it your episodes, or your angst maybe with
right. So
your
well, I
boyfriends.
graduated I graduated high school in 2006. So there's been a good, granted, it probably wasn't until like my mid 20s that I really became like a sane person. So we'll say like 06 to like 2014 was maybe maybe 2013. I met my partner in 2014 and I was pretty much good by then. We had a few incidents early on, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's like 15 years of, or I guess I wrote the book in 2019. So there was like, 10 to 14 years of distance from like when I was like that hot-headed person who was drawn to like the worst, types of people. Because the other thing, and I think a lot of young people go through this too, is that like it was partially on me that I was like, there were plenty of nice guys that wanted to, go out with me. And I would go out with, very like, in retrospect, guys that were like, would have been really great in a relationship, but it's like, I would always just kind of, they were like invisible to me. And I would just like go right to the one who was like trouble, and I think
so you had this like gay bad boy fetish.
Exactly. Right. And I think a lot of people, have to go through that to an extent before they can recognize it. And that's also in the book, was kind of, I was raised by a single mother, and she had a very similar issue. Like when I was really young, I would see her with these men that were just like not nice people, and I would just be like, why is she with this guy? Like every time she like brought a new man home, I would be like, come on, can't you just like date like one good guy? And I just didn't understand it until I became old enough to start dating. And then, you realize that when you're in it and you're with someone like that, you just ignore the red flags entirely, and you don't really understand that you're that you're doing that. So so that was also kind of a theme of the book.
Yeah. And I mean, we really see that with, so Joey, and Gia is his mother. And I think she must have been like 17, 16 when she had Joey.
Yeah, it was a teen mom situation. So she was 16, which I think, helps, especially in the editing process. There were, some moments where like my agent or my beta readers would say, shouldn't Gia be a little more of a like good influence? and I was like, well, no, that's the whole point, is that like when when you're so close in age and you're like, you're really learning together, like, and I think that was something that I wanted to show, that like, just because she's the parental figure, it doesn't necessarily mean that like she has all of her shit figured out too. And granted, like she could have been a little older, but I think for the way the story was, it worked with them being so close in age. And it's really like more, it's a mother-son relationship, but it's also very much like a friendship,
Exactly. Yeah. And that really comes out. And I mean, there's a lot of drama between them and friction that eventually happens that I'm not going to spoil, but lies that she would told, and Joey starts to unravel her past. But the dynamic of this bond that they share, this intimacy, I mean, is that something you experience? Like, are you
oh yeah,
I'm trying not to use the oft-quoted phrase mama's boy, but like, are you as tightly intertwined with your mother? Okay, hold on to that question, because we'll be right back. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Yeah, that the characters were very much, it's not exactly the same, but a lot of it is, growing up, uh, a lot of times it was just my mom and me and us figuring things out together. And, she was, not to say she wasn't like a parent, and not to say Gia's not a parent, but there's just a different kind of vibe when it's, I think, when you're close in age and when you're gay, like it's a totally different thing than like, a straight kid with like a normal family. And it was, so yeah, like a lot of times, like the relationship between my mom and I growing up, it was very much like Lorelai Gilmore and Rory Gilmore in the Gilmore Girls. And I remember watching that show and being like, feeling like represented in a way, but then it was like, oh, well, they show this, and there's other examples of that, like very close mother-daughter bond in pop culture too. Like there were a lot of great Natalie Portman movies in the early 2000s that I feel like showed that, but like it's rare to see it with a gay son and a young single mom. So since that was my experience, I wanted to kind of bring it to the story. So yeah, I mean, it's not totally autobiographical. Like obviously I embellished quite a few and made up, a whole ridiculous story that I hoped would be entertaining. But yeah, there was some element of wanting to just show that because it's I think it's a special relationship, but it's one that, isn't very commonly portrayed.
Yeah. And are you an only child, Nick?
I'm not. I actually have an older brother, but he was kind of he was in the picture too. Like the three of us lived under the same roof. But he was kind of off doing his own thing. He had like a lot more friends and stuff, and he was straight. So there was kind of, for the purposes of like a story like this, it was like there was no need for a straight brother. Love my brother in real life.
Yeah. How did he respond to this novel? Do you remember when your brother and your mom too, what their feedback was to your novel?
I think he was probably relieved. I don't think he would want me to write a book where where he was factored in as like a character. So I think his was relief. I was a little nervous, because I waited until I had an arc, and then I let her read that. And thankfully she loved it, and she thought it was really, fun and entertaining. And it took a minute because she doesn't really read a lot of fiction. She's more of like a nonfiction and like self-help type book person.
Okay.
So I kind of had to explain to her, like, this is a made up story. You may see some similarities to real life, but I promise that it is made up. And, don't read too much into anything. But, of course, she connected a lot of the dots, and like she would text me and be like, oh my God, I remember like when, this exact moment or something. And we had a few conversations, but luckily she ended up being like its biggest cheerleader. So that was a relief, because I was nervous.
Yeah. Well, and Joey and Gia, I mean, I'm an only child, but I wasn't raised by a single mom though, because that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to, throw myself in the ring for any possible burn it all down. I mean, I would be an old Joey because I'm almost 30, but
well, that's how it goes in Hollywood.
Yeah. And I get my facial rejuvenation treatments. So yeah, but all jokes aside, I am curious if, has there been talk, speaking of Hollywood or, TV? I'm always like, that's always a question I have for any writer, just because I know it's a hot button issue, which is getting your book acquired.
Right. So I think I can say this. So I'll say it was optioned, which is amazing, and it was like that was like a huge dream come true. I don't think I can say like by who and any other details, but yeah, there is a production team that's working on it right now. So my fingers are like extremely crossed that they can get it into development before the option expires, or that that they can do something, because I know it's right now it's in that phase where it's like there's a team that's working on it and they're really into it, but they have to they have to find the backing to make it happen. And yeah, there were some before we signed the option deal that we did, there was actually a like a 9-month period where the book was exclusively with Lady Gaga for consideration to see if she would attach as to play the role of Gia, which would have been so perfect.
She would have been wonderful. Oh my gosh,
know.
I can see it now.
It was like the dream scenario. And after all that time of like whatever her team was, I guess they were going back and forth, and they ended up passing in the end. But so that was like but that would have been a total dream. But the situation we ended up in is also really great, and I cannot wait to hopefully see it come to fruition and actually be able to talk about it in more detail and publicly announce the
I hope so
all
too.
of the details.
No, I hope so too. I can't wait. Hopefully there'll be an update. You can even throw me into that party in upstate New York that happens. No,
I'll let offline.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm also thinking maybe Lady Gaga, I'm sure this was during the whole, like, she had probably just finished House of Gucci, right?
Oh yeah, it was actually before. It was the timing sucked because it was shortly after she like committed to House of Gucci. So this was like a couple of years ago, like before it was published. And so at least we got it over with before it came out. So I didn't feel like I missed out on too much opportunity while it was exclusively with her team. But yeah, so then it came out, and that's when we landed with the team that we did.
Yeah.
So,
well, I have to ask, did you ever hear from her, or?
No, it was just I don't even know if I'm still very unclear on how all of that works. Like if the reason it took so long was because she had to like make up her mind, or if it was like people in her camp that were just waiting for the right moment or something. It's all so confusing.
And there are so many, but I think for the general public, they don't realize how many people are in the camp of a celebrity like that.
Oh my God. Yeah. And like they
to it actually get to the celebrity.
Right.
It's not like a 1-to-1 ratio.
Right. And my film agent is at the same agency as her talent agent. So CAA. And so like at first I was like, oh, this is great. We're all in the same family, she'll read it right away. But yeah, there's just so many different layers. And I mean, their lives are like scheduled, several years into the future, and there's all kinds of different things. So, yeah, it's hard to get a star to attach to a film project. That is something I have learned from her and some of the other experiences.
But maybe you could get a Real Housewife of New Jersey as Gia.
To make her
Melissa Gorga.
Yes.
I could see it though, because they have that personality.
Full on.
Actually, I think I just did your casting for you. No.
I'm sure she wants to act.
Yeah,
so.
It could be really interesting. I mean, well, we have to speak of Jersey because New Jersey is the character, who is full of all the twists and turns before Joey and Gia flee to Lake George in
Right.
upstate New York. But okay, so were you raised in Bayonne, New Jersey?
No, that's
Oh,
actually
okay.
really funny. A lot of like most people would probably think, because I've adopted Jersey as like such a I mean, I loved it. So I was raised in Connecticut, and went to college there, went to grad school at NYU.
Okay.
And I didn't move to Jersey until I was 26. And it was just because I started seeing my partner, and he lived in Jersey City, like kind of right over the river from New York. And at the time I was living in Stamford, Connecticut, I did not have any interest in becoming a Jersey person. I was like hoping he would move like to be with me, but it didn't work out that way. So our first year together, we lived in in like an apartment in downtown Jersey City, and that was basically just like living in New York. I didn't.
Yeah. I
feel
call that like one of the boroughs of Manhattan.
Yeah,
basically.
it felt like a
That's not
borough.
even Jersey.
Right.
Like kind of
So,
Jersey. Yeah,
it's like technically, but yeah, you don't feel like, I didn't feel any different. But then we moved to this kind of like private community on the like Bayonne line. So it was like totally disconnected from downtown, and the only really like the place we went to do everything was Bayonne. Like got our gas in Bayonne. We went grocery shopping in Bayonne. Like we went out to eat in Bayonne. So I felt like I lived in Bayonne, and the more time I spent there, the more it just reminded me of like where I came from, which was like more like not like the nice part of Connecticut. I know people hear Connecticut and they think like, Greenwich.
Yeah, they think of Old Greenwich and
Right.
Westport and the waspy culture. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I grew up right outside of Hartford, and it was like both my sets of grandparents immigrated from Italy, and like in Hartford back in the day, there was this street called Franklin Avenue, which was basically like the Little Italy, which is where my grandparents originally kind of started raising my parents. And then like by the time I was born, they were outside of Hartford, and kind of everyone left Franklin Avenue. But it was still like a big place we would go, to get our pastries and to go out to eat, and they would have like festivals and stuff. So Bayonne basically reminded me of that. And I was like, oh, like I totally feel so at home here. And there was a lot of, it was also similar too, because like it was like it's a city where there were a lot of like old school Italian families, and over the years, people kind of leave. I think like the trajectory is like you go from Staten Island, then to Bayonne, then to like somewhere in suburban Jersey. So it reminded me a lot of Franklin Avenue in that there were a lot of like old Italians, but you could tell it wasn't quite what it used to be. And
if you can, you go to Wayne, New Jersey.
Right. Yeah. There's
Or
like that.
I'm from South Jersey, so like I grew up in a very Italian American suburb, but like families moved from South Philly to then like all the South Jersey neighborhoods. So like anytime your character mentions like an Italian dessert,
Yeah.
I exactly like know what you're talking about. But yeah, and okay, so you had some insider knowledge of Bayonne. And yeah, Bayonne, I think it's fair to say it's working class Italian American traditionally.
Yeah.
And I know it's changed the demographics.
Right.
But like, please tell me you know the Short Hills area.
Yeah. Well, so that would
Okay.
be, we love to golf, my partner and I. So
Okay.
when we lived in Jersey, there's a really good golf course in Bayonne, but it's like impossible to get into. It's a private club. So we would always have to drive like, I don't know if we like played any courses in Short Hills, but we would go out to like Westfield and certain areas, Madison, and like that around there. And so we would end up at the Short Hills Mall sometimes. And yeah, that was an area of Jersey where when we, before the pandemic, we didn't know where we wanted to move. We were thinking Connecticut or Jersey, and we looked at some of those areas. So freaking expensive even before the pandemic. I can only imagine now, because real estate has just gone insane since the pandemic. But yeah, so that was like an area we like sometimes talked about, like, oh, if we want to stay in Jersey and still work in the city type of thing. So we drove around there a lot. And but yeah, I never like lived there.
Okay. Well, I asked because I went to Kane, which is only 15 minutes. It's in Union, Kane. So like,
oh, okay.
I had a date in Milburn, like learned about, I would like drop off my friend who worked at the Short Hills Mall. Now I have an undergrad. My mentor lives in Chatham. So like I always pass through. Yeah. So like I know Short Hills really well. Like, so I loved how Short Hills became this big figure. I'm like, someone else recognizes its beauty.
Right.
But no, it's like a very small area, but
right.
Yeah, the amount of wealth, but it's also around a lot of middle class areas. So it's a really interesting, upper middle class-ish place.
Right. It's very like, that's what I felt like when we lived in Jersey. It was so interesting because we would, go from like one extreme to the other, just like within the course of like a couple miles.
Yeah.
And so it definitely, when I was writing this story, and I think one thing with me too is like, when I'm writing setting, it's easier for, maybe this is just laziness, but it's easier for me to just write like what I know the best. And I mean, at the time when I was writing this, we had been in Jersey for like 5 years at that point. And it was like, my daily routine was like, I was at Bayonne getting my hair cut. I was going to get a bagel, like, and it's like I had my like hairdresser who kind of wasn't like Gia, but she was partially, inspired that whole aspect of her life. Because my mom was not a hairdresser, but so yeah, it was like I was very much like living my life. And then when I would go into the manuscript, I would be like, all right, well, let me just put this little nugget from this weekend when we were in Short Hills or whatever. So yeah, it was just very much a result of me living there.
Yeah. Well, maybe you should have eventually an extravagant party at the Short Hills Hilton.
Yeah.
Was that my parents stayed there like when I was at Kane?
Love it.
That's in your future, Nick. I'll come. I'll be the first person there.
I'm trying to remember if I've been to, I don't think I've been to that. I've been to a couple of weddings, New Jersey weddings that were in hotels.
Yeah.
And I don't.
But that area, I mean, I love the nature in Morris County, especially like Summit, Chatham.
Oh my God. Yeah.
All those, the nature, the trails. Oh yeah. So good shout out for that. And I guess we really helped Short Hills tourism, and you did in your book, except there's a fire and a house. Well, crumbles to the ground.
There's some crime.
Yeah, there's some crime. And you do shout out Rutgers, which I know New Jerseyans are going to be really excited about. Except the Parsippany campus, which I'm not sure what the Parsippany campus is in Rutgers.
Oh no, you mean the Piscataway?
I mean, sorry, not Parsippany, Piscataway. I'm just like combining all the towns. Yeah, Piscataway. I mean, I always just think New Brunswick.
Yeah, I think that came from so when we were in New Jersey, at one point I actually worked at Audible, like the audiobook.
Yeah.
And they're actually based in Newark. And
okay.
I think we had like an intern or something who went to Rutgers and was like had most of her classes at the Piscataway campus. Like literally everything I pulled was just like from anecdotal, like
so okay, yeah, no, you've ignited my memory. That's right. The Piscataway is like a what did they call them? Like a flagship,
Yeah,
a very small flagship.
Yeah, not the main.
Yeah. The main is New
satellite.
Brunswick satellite. Thank you.
Right.
But I've been to the Rutgers Newark, and the Rutgers Camden is near where I grew up. So, okay. Shout out to Rutgers.
Yes, we love Rutgers.
We love Rutgers. Yeah. Even though that's not the state school I went to, but don't want to get into too much of a competition here. Love all the state schools in Jersey. There you go. But, as we're ending, I mean, I have to just ask you about, well, you brought up that you worked for Audible. I feel like you've worked for
everything,
like literary company. But Mark Sanderlin, who does your audiobook, is so fascinating. I am cracking up. It really is like I'm listening to a radio drama.
Yeah.
Like a high stakes radio comedy in a way.
He's great.
Yeah. So I'm sure you listened to samples like when they were auditioning.
Oh, actually, I was not involved at all. I don't know if it was because I just didn't ask, or I don't know what it was, but I literally didn't hear the audiobook until it was published.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and like the first thing I saw was Mark's name, and I wasn't familiar with him at that point, but I remember thinking like, oh no, he doesn't have an Italian last name. Is he going to be able to like get everything, the way that I want it to sound? And he nailed it. I mean, he really
did a great job.
He's such like an actor with his voice, that he really got all the characters. I loved his Nona voice.
Yes. Yeah. And how he distinguishes like social class, especially from the Manhattan vacationers in Lake George, especially Will, who, like, for all of you out there, eventually there's some kind of fling between Joey and Will. And, especially with their dynamic, we're kind of going full circle now.
Right.
Was that the type of moment where you really wanted to have Joey find his good boy, like this good guy who is intelligent, is reading this obscure history book when he first sees him, and maybe makes it past his bad boy phase?
Right. Yeah, I think everyone has to have that moment, or everyone who's been caught up in the bad boy thing. There's always a moment where you finally realize like there's a difference between like nice and boring. Like you can be there are nice guys out there, and just because they're not like treating you like shit and making you like check your phone 50 times a day and like withholding affection and all of those things, it doesn't mean they're boring. It just means they're normal. And it's possible to be attracted to a nice guy, when there's attraction. It's not, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like one thing to hear it, but to actually experience it and like find a connection with someone like that is, it's obviously much more effective. So yeah, I needed him to meet like a decent person who he was actually attracted to kind of have that moment where he realizes like, okay, this isn't like every guy. It's just the types of guys that for some reason, he's been drawn to previously. So that was very fun.
And he's really drawn to the straight man he can't have, Robbie.
Oh yeah. Which, I think in the gay world, there's a certain element of that.
Yeah, there's a relatability there. No, I understand. I'm in the gay world. But yeah, I think you have so much nuance with these relationships. Joey's psychology, Gia's psychology of, right? They're both trying to, you have the house image burning, but like they themselves are being leveled to the ground psychologically. So it works so well from the get-go.
Yeah, it's all about how we can be self-destructive as humans, when we think we're doing something that's going to make us feel better, but there's a very fine line between catharsis and self-destruction.
Exactly. And there, for all of you out there, like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, it's
like,
a very
it's not all yes, not everything gets burns up in flames.
Right.
Well, Nick, anything, what I do want to end on is actually, what would you really hope readers take away from Burn It All Down? Like, because you are combining so many exciting genres together.
Yeah, I know that's the thing, that with this book, it's like impossible to put one genre on it. But what do I hope people, honestly, the first and foremost is, I hope people have fun reading it. That's always my goal as a reader. Like, I read every genre. Like, I love thrillers, I love literary fiction, I love fluffy rom-coms, like beach reads, like literally everything. As long as it's like entertaining. So that is number one, was just, I hope it's like an experience that someone is like, oh, I'm so excited to like jump back into this book because it's so much fun. And then beyond that, just a little bit of some self-reflection. If, I know we're all at different places on our journey, but, certainly when it comes to like fellow gays and women, like Gia and Joey, some reflection on like, what are the patterns that I have and the types of guys that I'm into, and, are they healthy? Or, I mean, for anyone who's like on my side of it, hopefully it's more just like fun cringing at our past selves and like, oh shit, yeah, I don't miss being young and messy. But anyone who is young and messy, hopefully it helps them kind of see things from a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you, Nick. This was so exciting. And
thank you.
Yes. And all of you out there, either get your hands on Burn It All Down, link in the show notes, or listen to the audiobook read by Mark Sanderlin on Audible. Yes. And at Nick's alma mater. So head to Audible.
Shout out to all the Audible folks. We love them.
I do. I love Audible. Okay. Well, thank you. And bye, everyone listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, or True Crime in Academia. Welcome to our summer season. We made it to summer 2022. I am here with Mary DePippi. Hi, Mary.
Hello.
So we have some really exciting updates. First, I want to announce our new team. We thank Jaren Usta for all of her work as the marketing director. Jaren is leaving and going into really exciting projects with her own research. So congratulations, Jaren. So for our new team, well, I'm Andrew Rimby, the executive director. Mary DePippi is our chief contributor. Nicole Arguello is our marketing assistant, and Kimberly Dallas is our editor. So yay, our interns have positions. Okay.
Yay.
Please follow us on social media. Mary posts so many creative things on her True Crime in Academia. How can they follow True Crime, Mary?
At True Crime in Academia on Instagram and TikTok.
Okay. And then you can follow the Ivory Tower Boiler Room on Twitter at Ivory Boiler Room, and at Ivory Tower Boiler Room on, ready? Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Okay. And you can email us. We love to get pitched some episode ideas. So to do that, if you're a publicist out there, maybe you want to get one of your authors on our show, go to ivorytowerboilerroom@gmail.com. Thank you to our audience, to our listeners. We're really excited because we have a lot going on our Patreon. So Mary, do you want to maybe update everyone on our Patreon account?
Yes. So aside from the content that we've already been giving you, we will also be having extra special episodes. Specifically for true crime, I will be having an extra bonus episode every month starting in June.
Yay.
You can
And the
only get
Yes.
that if you are a subscriber.
Yes. So patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. That's it. Just /Ivory Tower Boiler Room. And
Easy.
we already have a lot of bonus material. First, there is a full episode with Ursula Klein in our book corners. So you're going to see all of these new special series that are going to pop up in the summer on Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Yes, Mary will do it too on True Crime in Academia. You can listen to a teaser on our podcast, but guess where the whole interview is? On our Patreon. So only a cup, not a cup, but a large cup of iced coffee at any of our favorite coffee companies. You only have to pay $5 a month. So please join. We will recognize all of you who join. We'll shout you out during the summer. You can see our video interviews too. And if you want to become an Ivory Tower $15 a month, 3 cups of iced coffee member, you actually will get our tote bag, our t-shirt. There's more. Oh, our mug.
Cup.
I'm drinking from our mug. I should, for everyone who will see this, I'm actually holding it up. It's a very cool mug. So we are so excited for all of you to join us this summer. I love hearing from all of you. I know Mary loves hearing from all of you. Direct
Mhm.
message us. We read them. And yeah, check out our social media because we post so many clips from the shows. And I started to kind of finesse my way around TikTok. So Mary sees how excited I get when I know how to add music and all these filters. So on that note, please join us for our Instagram events this summer. We have a monthly book club. Every month we have our book club. And we're going to start having television recaps. We're going to have another open mic poetry event at Pen and Brush. So stay tuned. I think we might have a Halloween party, but just someone told me that. Okay.
A little birdie.
Little birdie. Okay. I think we got it all, Mary. So
I think so.
on that note, let's put a bookmark in this.
Yup.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hold tight.